Welcome to the Leaders in Payments podcast, where we talk to C-level leaders from across the payments landscape. We'll be discussing the products and services that impact the payment space today, as well as trends and predictions for the future of payments. We will also hear stories from our guests about their journeys to the top.
The customer buys online, comes and returns in the store, buys online, exchanges it in another store, buys in another store and exchanges it in another store. So payments is, it's a big nightmare. You hit it on the head on that one. And for even the brands to manage that is a big massive operational overhead. So yes, that kind of experience where I just store my credit card somewhere and then I just shop like it's, the channels don't matter to me. So yes, that omnichannel experience is key to what we are doing. And we're focused heavily on making sure that it's a seamless experience from a payments point of view.
That was Susan Jeffers, the CEO and founder of XY Retail. And this is episode 197 of the Leaders in Payments podcast. And I'm your host, Greg Myers. To date, Susan has founded 3 successful companies and most recently created a retail platform unparalleled in its omnichannel offerings. She came to the United States at the ripe age of 16 with nothing but $200 in her pocket and a vision to create something impactful. XY Retail is a fully hosted retail platform that connects all aspects of the retail business, from supply to demand, as well as a global POS and unified commerce solution that allows brands the convenience and capacity to run their entire operations directly from their phone. According to Susan, the customer journey is no longer a straight line, and customers expect a seamless, connected experience from start to finish and throughout the entire customer journey. So she set out to solve this need and provide brands with the tools they need to give their customers the experience they want. They target the high-end luxury fashion retail sector, and as for their competitive advantage, Susan touts the ability to allow brands to manage absolutely every aspect of their business from their mobile phone, as well as the inherent functionality of a full-service, one-stop shop offering. We've got a great episode ahead, so let's get started. Hi, Susan. Thank you for being here, and welcome to the Leaders in Payments podcast.
Hi, Greg. Excited to be here.
Great. So let's go ahead and dive right in. If you don't mind, tell our audience a little bit about yourself, maybe where you grew up, where you went to school, where you currently live, a few things like that.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. This is Susan Jeffers. I'm the CEO of XY Retail. I was born in Bombay, India, moved by myself when I was 16 and then went to school in Silicon Valley. And for the last 4 years, I've been shuttling between New York and Italy for my startup. I love everything retail. I love fashion and technology. And since I started the company, I've had the fortune to spend time with a lot of the brands, all the way from the fabric mills to factories with sales associates in the stores, merchandisers in the back office, and with brand owners. And that's kind of really what I'm doing, what XY is all about, is to provide something of value in this retail sort of supply chain.
Okay. Yeah. And let's dive into XY Retail. Maybe tell the audience exactly what the company does.
In general, the first thing you always ask is, what is the problem you're solving, right? So look, retail is not really what it used to be. I mean, I don't really only go to stores today. While it's fundamentally about buying and selling, the customer journey is no longer a straight line, right? There's no clear cut to purchase. So customers do not see any channels. They don't see online channel. They don't see store channels. But what they do see is the brand. And what they do expect is a seamless, connected experience wherever they are, whether it's online, on mobile, at a kiosk, in a pop-up shop, it doesn't matter. So XY is that one platform that seamlessly connects your entire retail business, whether it's from the supply to the demand, and allows brands to run their business on their phones.
Okay. And how did the company get started?
So the company is founded by myself and my co-founder, Puneet Arora. And we have a lot of experience between the two of us, working all the way from startups. I'm what you call is a serial entrepreneur. This is my 3rd startup. And, and he's worked in the enterprise space. This is his 6th enterprise grade product in the market. So what we saw was there was a consistent problem across all these, whether it's the small startup or whether it's, Fortune 50 brand. And that's kind of the genesis of XY Retail on one side, right? So there's two parts of the story. So one is on the brand side, where they have multiple different systems that they have to service this connected consumer, if you will. And then on the flip side of that coin is the customer experience. So having worked across all these different channels and having experienced as a customer, the experience as a customer in these channels, it just didn't seem to be on par with what the brands wanted. So, I dug a little bit deeper, and being in the Valley for 15 years, I was comfortable with technology. And so, I just kept asking people in the stores when I met people at events and asked them, what's going on? What's the problem here? And at the end of the day, it just boiled down to really one thing. They did not have the right tools, even though they had the right, ideas, and they wanted to provide the best possible experience to their customers. They did not have the tools to do that. And that's kind of, where we both looked at each other and we decided to, solve the problem.
Okay. And I would assume you kind of consider yourself a platform business. I assume it's a SaaS model.
Yes, it is very much. It's a host. Yeah, it's a fully hosted platform with multiple applications. So our offering in the market today, what we call SKUs internally, we do have a point of sale, although I don't like to call it a point of sale because it's not just traditionally what a point of sale is, just a payment device. But we've kind of expanded the scope of a point of sale where it's everything that you need to service a customer in the store. So there's that. And then obviously we also power e-commerce websites. So we do have an e-commerce offering. And then we do have, all of this stuff would not be possible if we did not have an order management system. So where the, buy online, return in store, buy online, pick up in store, that's kind of the orchestration that happens in that engine. And then, our fundamental IP really is where all the data resides, right? So we have one unified platform for your data, and we'll keep building more applications like a clienteling application as the customers want.
Okay. And you mentioned brands and retail. Can you give us is there a specific portion of that? I mean, is it just luxury brands? Can it be any brand? Is it just retailers? I mean, what is sort of the target market?
So our initial go-to-market, what we found, and, just being an entrepreneur and being in the Valley, one thing you learn is to find sort of that niche market and then expand from there. So we were lucky enough to have the fortune to meet with some of the brands who were trying to move from Italy to New York. And that's kind of where we got into the luxury space. So yes, our offering today is focused primarily on the fashion retail, accessories, home decor, fragrances. And I do believe that, we would like to stay in that band because it's the same band of customers that would go to, say, a 5-star hotel or a luxury boutique or, go and buy a certain type of car. So there's a certain type of experience that that band of, brands would like to provide. And for the foreseeable future, I would like to, yes, that's kind of where we are in the fashion luxury retail market.
Okay. And I assume that's on a global scale.
Yeah. The beauty of it is brands by nature are global, right? So, I just literally signed a deal with about 700 stores in 24 different countries. So we as a startup, compared to most other startups that, focus heavily on the US market, we've had no choice but to kind of look at about 60 countries and what that involves in terms of compliance and regulations and fiscalizations and payments and stuff like that.
And what would you say differentiates your company from your competitors out there?
So in terms of differentiation, so this is where it stands today, right? I mean, if I want a point of sale system, I have a different vendor. If I want to have a clienteling system, I go to another vendor. If I want some operational analytics, I go to another vendor. If I want an order management, I have another vendor. So I think one of the strengths of what we do and what really sets us apart, that's just one of them is, just a unified platform across all these different experiences. The second thing is I think we are also we are one of the first retail platforms in the market that is fully cloud native. So we are built from the ground up on the cloud. And then the third thing is mobility is a big driver for us as well. So that's really, the end-to-end experience from the customer coming to the store to the customer leaving with something in their hand, whether it's printing a receipt and then taking it a bit further in terms of CRM and stuff, everything on mobile. So that's really, I think, our three key differentiators. But overall, I think, we just, given how we've gone about it, we've sat in the stores with the sales associates, sat with the merchandisers, we've built it with them. And so our offering just looks entirely different from the next guys. And that's really what it is, right? It's just we've kind of grown up with the brands, and rather than two guys in a garage, we've actually been in Italy, been to France, been to the Middle East, been sitting in India. We've just gone and we've just been building out the platform. So that's really, I think, how we look at retail, how we approach how retail needs to work and operate in today's world where everybody is working on their phones. I manage my entire life on my phone. Mm-hmm. That whole perspective is different. And I think that platform that you need, or the tools that you need is completely different from what is available in the market today.
Okay. Let's dive into the payments aspect of it a little bit. And you mentioned you have a POS, but you don't really like to refer it as such. But maybe talk about the payments product that you offer, maybe what makes it unique and sort of, why is payment so important to your business?
Right. So we actually made a very conscious decision. So if you look at most POS companies, there's usually a sort of a lock-in, right? So they have their own payment providers, or they provide their payments as part of the POS offering. And so there's almost like I would say it's a lock-in that most of the brands get into. So we kind of took a step back, and what we, looked at it was in two ways, right? One is choice is very important. So for me, offering that kind of choice to the customer, to our customers, to brands was very important. So we have virtualized payments. So it doesn't matter which payment provider it is, what the brand wants or what the organization is working with. We can plug and play any of those payment providers. And then second thing is, payments is just, and that's why, I said it's not just a POS, because payments is just a part of that experience, right? It's a very small part of that entire experience. So for us, we had to look at the entire journey of the customer and of the sales associate or the user and build it out in a way that is seamless for them. So both on the customer side and on the user side. Essentially, long story short, is we virtualize payments so we can plug and play payment, any kind of gateways in our platform.
And where do you see sort of the future? I mean, how much do you see changing from where we are today from a payments perspective in this luxury goods kind of market? I mean, what we've seen in payments, obviously, over the years is sort of that, frictionless experience, the whole Uber experience where payments doesn't even really happen. There's no sort of point of interaction where there's a payment. I mean, what do you see the trends being in your industry around payments?
I see payments as being ubiquitous and embedded in the customer experiences across digital and physical channels, right? So that's really always been our core strategy. So just focusing on the customer experience. So that's where, I think Apple Tap to Pay is sort of the first step towards that. As you said, in Uber, you don't really take out your card. I think it's the same thing when I go to any kind of retail outlet. I shouldn't have to take out my card. It's just I tap to pay. So you get rid of all the sort of the clunky devices that actually are sort of impediments to the customer experience, and just service the customer using an iPhone. So that's really where I see. And my passion is I love brands, and I want to give them, the focus of, at least my focus is giving them a platform where they can provide that seamless experience to their customers. So that's kind of where I see the future of payments is just completely touch-free, and it's just a seamless experience where I walk in and walk out of the store.
Yeah, and I think the other aspect that I wanted to talk a little bit about is sort of, and you mentioned it, it's kind of this omnichannel approach, right? I mean, it hasn't been that many years that you're able to go online or go into a store or use mobile and sort of get the same kind of customer experience or customer journey. And it sounds like that's sort of that omnichannel retail approach is really what you guys are building and are good at. Am I kind of summarizing that right?
Yeah, absolutely, Greg. I think that's, where it's at. I think the customer buys online, comes and returns in the store, buys online, exchanges it in another store, buys in another store and exchanges it in another store. So payments is, it's a big nightmare. You hit it on the head on that one. And for even the brands to manage that is a big massive operational overhead. So yes, that kind of experience where I just store my credit card somewhere and then I just shop like it's, the channels don't matter to me. So yes, that omni-channel experience is key to what we are doing. And we're focused heavily on making sure that it's a seamless experience from a payments point of view.
You are probably familiar with the words buy now, pay later, how it has grown exponentially over the past couple of years and is still one of the hottest trends in payments. It's become a norm for retailers to provide a buy now, pay later payment option for their customers, many of whom no longer want to use credit cards for larger purchases. Business leaders are tasked with finding a payment solution that offers a seamless digital customer experience that results in increased sales. Citizens Pay is a buy now, pay later solution created by citizens that helps retailers drive sales and increase loyalty by providing customers with transparent installment financing, longer repayment terms, and a dedicated line of credit for repeat purchases. It's also optimized for merchants looking to offer a payment option to consumers with more mature and sophisticated purchases in mind, like a new living room set, fitness equipment, or a kitchen appliance. With Citizens Pay, merchants have the security of a leading national bank and an omnichannel platform designed to streamline the buying process. If you want to learn more about Citizens Pay, follow the link in our bio or visit citizenspay.com/podcast, where you can find additional information about Citizens Pay and the buy now, pay later payment model. This podcast is part of a paid partnership between Citizens Pay and the Leaders in Payments podcast. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about you. So tell us a little bit about your journey to your role there as the CEO and founder. Sort of what did you do before and what led up to you founding this company?
So before this, as I said, this is my third company. But before this, at least my journey to being an entrepreneur and even getting to where I am today really started about, when I got out of school about 10 years ago. And I worked at a startup incubator, one of the first of its kind. And I had the fortune of, being exposed to, 50, 60 plus founders of different startups. And as part of that, it was just, a lot of, I learned through immersion. I learned what not to do, what to do. And I just kept learning along the way. And I kept trying things on my own. My first company got acquired. My second company, we kind of, it was acquired again. And then this is kind of my third company. And as a founder, I think a big part of it is getting to where I have gotten to. It required taking some amount of risk, right? So there was some risk involved and founding XY, which is like, a massive platform. It's not, an app here or an app there. I think we had to assume that risk before we could go to the VCs and say, hey, I want to build out the next generation SAP for retail, for example, right? And so we really invested. I invested not just our money. I mean, a lot of our time sitting and learning the space and talking to people and our equity and blood, sweat and tears, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And I knew that that was one of those points where I needed to invest initially, then get to the VCs. But before getting to the VCs, I had to have a customer. So we got a couple of customers early, but the main thing was to get a customer that was a good referenceable customer for our platform, right? It's global, 20 different countries, stores in 20 different countries, running an end-to-end e-commerce platform. So we got that customer. And then, I sort of raised some money. So in a way, I wouldn't say I was given this job, but I kind of grew into it myself and just taking the risk. And in every situation, right, you have a moment where you can either go left or right. And then you just pick, at that moment, you pick, whichever direction you need to go. And that kind of tells a lot about you. And so that's kind of really where we are today. And we just, as I said, we had a big deal that we signed up. We have a very, very, our traction, I couldn't be happy. It's going really very well and as planned, even better than planned. So a lot of risks, Greg, actually, that I think more than anything is just taking a lot of risks.
So do you have entrepreneurs in your family?
Good question. The answer is no. I don't know. I always, since I was 12, I wanted to do something of my own. I knew I needed to get out, and that movie is funny when I watched that movie, but I knew I wanted to get out, and that's kind of how I felt. I needed to get out. I needed to do something on my own. Even in at 16, I came to the US. I came to the US myself. My first job, I've done everything from babysitting to working in a spa to working in a laundromat and just kind of working at, trying to figure out what is it that, is that success metric? What is it that is going to help me as a minority woman as well, right? But one thing, I've been in the US for 20 years now. So I love it. I think I love the environment. I think it's conducive to all the, people who are willing to work hard, willing to take that risk ultimately, right? And so that's what I learned very early in life is to actually just put in the hard yards, man, and just make that leap of faith, make that jump.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people who, their dad's a doctor, so they become a doctor. And then there's some that their dad's a doctor and they're like, I don't want to be a doctor. Right. So sometimes the family line makes a difference. And sometimes people say, I don't want to go that route. So it's always interesting to sort of hear those.
My dad, he had one job his entire life. Rest in peace. But yeah, that was something I really did not want to do very early in life. And I'm actually one of those entrepreneurs who really did come with like $200 in her wallet. I really did not have the luxury of, I really did have to fight. So I think that's what kind of made me who I am and made me make those choices of, and for me, just being financially independent, I think, is a big part of what I fundamentally believe, right? It's core to me. And I think in general, we talk a lot about equality. And I think it stems from, as women, I think we need to be financially independent in whatever we do and try not to get bogged down by the social constructs that are created, right? So I just focused on just being myself, being my own person, and focused on excelling in whatever I do. And as a result, being financially independent.
Awesome. So, Susan, what are some things that you're passionate about? So maybe one work-related passion and one personal passion.
I think work-related, it's funny, I grew up in the Valley in 98, right? And that's when, I think it was Google started in 96, 97. It really just kicked in high gear in 98. And so I actually grew up in this digital world, right? Facebook in 2003. So we did everything online, but, there's still something to be said about going out and having a beer with a friend, going out and, shopping with your family or your friends and touching and feeling the fabric and, just talking about the history of where that design came from. So that is, something I'm actually passionate about. I do believe that even though, a lot of the Valley investors talk about, everything is going to be digital and everything is going to be metaversed and, but at the end of the day, we are, living, breathing human beings, we are social beings. And so I do like to go out. I'm passionate about brands and I love the stories that they come, the history, the heritage of where they belong. And most importantly, I really think that they fundamentally can make a change and impact in the world, right? And that's what you're seeing with sustainability and stuff like that. So they can really impact, and everybody follows once they lead. So I want to be at that kind of apex of with those brands. So brands are my passion. I love everything about brands. I think that the same thing goes for me on my personal side. I always get into trouble about this, but I really do think that getting independence in terms of it allows you to do financial independence as a woman has been a big driver for me. So it's key to equality. It gives a lot of confidence. All right. It allows us to provide for our friends, for our family, and so much more. And I really want to make sure that I'm able to somewhat be a role model to the next generation of not just women, but even, guys, where they look at women as, equals and be okay with women being, financially independent. So equality is a big part, but I don't want to take it to a point where, because I'm very lucky to have really good men in my life and people who have really supported me throughout this journey. So I've really not experienced that much of discrimination, but I know it's out there. So if I can help in any way, but I can only say that in a positive sort of fashion, right? So a passion for fashion and and just optimize your life. Optimization never goes out of fashion. So optimize your life and make sure that you're financially independent.
Yeah, I think that's great. And ironically, we do a couple of special series throughout the year as part of this podcast. And one of them is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of them is women leaders in payments. So I think we touch on two of those things that you talked about. So those topics to me are underserved in the payments or fintech industry. So we spend a month focusing on each of those topics. So I'm glad you brought those up.
Amazing.
Yeah. One final question. So, I typically ask this about advice for people who are new to the payments industry. But I think in this case, what advice would you give people who are coming into sort of your area? So the brand, it's not payments necessarily, right? It's kind of almost entrepreneurship. It's building a platform to solve a problem. Like, what advice would you give people who are just coming into that space?
So I would like to say something about the payments as well, but I'll answer your question first. I think the main thing is getting to that product market fit, right? So getting customers early. So obviously building something that you have a market for and establishing that early in your journey, I think is very critical. And that's what will drive, the capitalization of the company and get more customers. So finding a space that, is wide and, there's people willing to pay for your idea early in the game, I think is crucial because you can keep building, and then realize because you've invested so much and then realize it's maybe there's some other cheaper alternative or a better alternative, or it's just not really a good fit for the market at that point in time. So that's really where I think most entrepreneurs, need to go and cash flow, man. I think really cash is king in our space. So watch out that cash, watch out that wallet. As far as in terms of payments, I think it's somewhat what the tack we've taken. It's payments is no longer like it's never standalone, as you said, right? It's like I can buy online and I can deliver, I can return in store. So it's never standalone. It's so the only advice I can give here is that payments are not an island. So when you're building something, build with that in mind. It's not the entire customer experience, but only a small part of that journey. So that's really where I think, just think of that entire life cycle of the customer when you're building anything in payments. And that could mean the life cycle of the end customer or the life cycle of your customer.
Okay. Well, Susan, we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about your company, what you're doing, the value you bring, what differentiates you. Obviously, we've talked about your personal journey. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I think I'm good. So thank you. I really appreciated this time. I only think that there's a lot of activity happening in the payment space. So I would love to, hear from you on your thoughts as well, and maybe how we can maybe utilize that as part of our offering.
Okay. I think one thing that's changed a lot in the payment space is that whole kind of frictionless, seamless offering. And I think, what people expect from a brand is that kind of experience. And it sounds like that's what you guys are building. It wasn't that long ago that if you bought something online from a brand and you went to the store, they would look at you funny, like, what are you doing here? Right. I mean, that hasn't been, that hasn't been solved for very long. And I think some companies probably still struggle with that. So yes. I think solving that's not a payment specific problem, but it's a customer journey challenge, right? It's a customer experience. And I think that whole omnichannel and making sure that payments on the front end to the customer is seamless and easy. And then I think there's a whole set of challenges on the back end, right? From, once you receive the payments and the credit cards and the reconciliation and the orchestration and all of that, it sounds like, that's part of your model too. So,
yes.
I love the way you've integrated payments across the board, and it's not, you don't have to make it about payments, right? I mean, payments is part of it, but it's just a small part of the overall journey.
Exactly. Perfect. So, perfectly said. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, no, I've really, really enjoyed our time today. I know your time is very valuable, so I want to be sensitive to that. So again, Susan, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Greg. It was my pleasure. Have a good one, man.
Yes, you too. And to all you listeners out there, I thank you for your time as well. And until the next story.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Leaders in Payments podcast. Make sure you visit our website at leadersinpayments.com, where you can subscribe to the show and where you'll find our show notes. If you enjoyed listening, please share on your social channels as well.